This is a 2008 Mercedes S550. What we're working with here is this is actually an optical network. A network of different modules that are connected via an optical fiber. Now this is called the MOST network, M-O-S-T. This is used by Mercedes and other manufacturers such as BMW and Volkswagen. Now what's happening is that the command module and the DVD player up towards the front of the vehicle are communicating with the amplifier. The amplifier has been removed and sent to a facility in California for repair. And what we're looking at is different modules. Here we have the satellite radio receiver. One of these is the voice module. One of these is for the navigation here. This one's marked Bluetooth. Here I actually have a high frequency switch, and this is actually for the antenna array. Here I see a DC, it's marked DC to DC converter. Now what happened is that the what we're going to call the command center up front, it had a display where on the FM AM radio it just said no service. Also what happened is the DVD player was no longer present. And we worked with our friends there at Southern Autotronics, and what they simply did was examine the fiber optic cable. It was pretty simple. They did have a looping device to loop past it, but what happens is I energize the system, just turn the key on. I'll actually see a flash at the receiving fiber optic cable, and this is supposed to forward the packet to the next device in the ring. Now if I see the red flash, that tells me that the module before this one is good. If I plug this in, move to the next module in line, and I don't see the flash, it says, well, I didn't continue. It didn't continue coming out. Now I'm using an Audel MaxiDAS scan tool, and it very nicely identifies that I have a problem, and it also allows me to do a wake up and an optic ring test to show me which modules are present and which modules respond there on a wake up. And obviously on the wake up I power it up and I'm looking for it to respond there on the network. If it doesn't, well then obviously there's a problem. Now it's going to take us about a week and a half to get the amplifier module back. We're reassembling the vehicle so that it can go back in service. It's just not going to have an AM/FM radio. So that'll be fine. One thing that's interesting though about the Mercedes, and this is of course on the larger luxury coupes and sedans, has two batteries. This is what we would call the main battery, and there's a smaller starting battery out in the engine compartment. And here we see one of several fuse relay centers. This is actually behind a panel accessed easily from the rear seat. Now this actually has the parking assist and the blind spot monitoring. So I actually have a antenna here on both sides. It's going out to the outside the vehicle. So if you think about all the equipment that I have, how sparse the wiring harness really is. So here's using this fiber optic communication, I can communicate the actual audio information via fiber optic to the amplifier, and then the amplifier can then drive the speakers directly. So here we go. Hopefully here in another 2 weeks or so we'll all be back together and have a functional AM/FM radio. Okay. Here we see the Mercedes Bluetooth module. Here I see the connector for the optical fiber network. Here is the electrical harness connector, and this is the connector for the antenna. Now it mounts to this bracket, and it's just a little bit confusing and tricky of how this goes in. This is actually going to go in behind, and I have to reach up and hang it right there, and there it leaves the connector to plug in my connectors. And of course this is all held with a combination of 8mm and 10mm fasteners. Not too tight, but snug them down so it doesn't rattle or go anywhere. And then we should be able to reach our connector up without any problem and plug it in. Okay, here we have what I believe is the voice activation module, and it's going to be connected to the MOS network. It has a little bit of a different style connector because the connector incorporates both the electrical and the optical fiber. A little hard to work with when you're using the bypass looper lollipop. You've got to have a little insert that just kind of comes down over the fiber optic cable so you can make the path around. And that little heat shrink tubing sometimes does very nicely. And again, what I'm doing is I'm cycling the key. If I see the flash, that means the module before is active. Go ahead and plug this one in. Look to the next connector in the ring. If I see the flash, it says, will this continue the packet? If I don't, well, hey, there's something wrong. Now, it could be, of course, obviously, internal failure, power supply connection, etc., etc. So I'd have to determine that, but at least I can quickly identify the problem. And again, the scan tool does the ring test, so I can try to see which modules are active on the ring. But hey, if I'm not going to forward the packet, then the ring is broken. Okay, so we'll go ahead and install this. Now, this is going to mount up here, and a little bit involves sticking it in there. I'm going to go ahead and do that first before plugging it in. Just want to go ahead and hang it up. There you go. And then I'm going to snug down my connectors and just curl around here and plug in my connector. I want to make sure, of course, I get it on the right way. And there's the next one in the loop. Okay, here we see the right side of the vehicle. This is the passenger side of the vehicle. One thing that's interesting here on the SL550 is we have this type of hydraulic pump. And hey, we're not working on this aspect of the vehicle, but this is interesting. I have a little hydraulic reservoir, an electric motor, hydraulic pump, apparently obviously a pressure and return. This is very interesting. And okay, now what happens on the S550, it has a very sophisticated closing and opening system for the trunk. And this is this hydraulic motor, and I'll demonstrate. Here I'm going to go ahead and close. There you see the motor jump as it starts up. There we go, close the trunk. There we go, go ahead and open the trunk. Man, I wonder what happens if I try and stop it. Ooh, it gives up and goes back the other way. Very nice. No, it certainly wouldn't hurt you, that's for sure. But here we see the motor jumping and the fluid flowing there in the reservoir. So here we have the mechanism to open and close the trunk. Works very smoothly, very quietly.